Hi, today I'm talking with Oz Chihwayi. We talked about moving countries, setting up a data center in South Africa, learning to run at age 34, about the smallest increment he could take to move forward, and learning by doing, or the kata way of learning.
I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome tonight. And with me, I have Oz Chihwayi. So, welcome, Oz.
Thank you for having me, Ves.
So, I wanted to one of the things I would like people to start with is show a little bit of where we are. So, I prepared this a little bit, and this is where I am in Belgium. And normally, Google should take us now uh, all the way to Johannesburg, where you are, and yeah, somewhere there. It's of course not exact, but I think it's close enough to where you are, so that
You
people
got it
see it
pretty
a little
close.
bit. So, and for me, in it's 20 after 8 in the evening, and if I'm correct, that is not that different from the time that you're in. I think we're more or less in the same time zone. Is it correct?
Absolutely. It's 21, just gone 22 now, past 8 as well. So we are on the
Yeah,
same time
exactly.
zone.
We're in the same time zone. It's one of the things I really like to show people, like, okay, we're very distant, but at the same time we're in the same time zones. If it's Yeah, it could be completely different part of the world where then the times are completely different, but this is a little bit easier to talk about. But easier, and in a sense, I've also discovered that you have in Johannesburg, you have some changes on electricity. So you just got back on electricity. Is that correct?
That is correct. So very interesting situation we have here. Um, it goes with huge demand for electricity and just not enough supply, probably due to a lack of maintenance over the years for the infrastructure starting to get old. And what they have to do, the power providers, is they have to limit the amount of power that goes out to the household. So you literally get a schedule that says
Mm-hmm.
today we're going to have we have a name for it here. It's called load shedding. So you know
Mm.
you're going to get load shed for it's usually between 2 to 2.5 hours at a time. So this evening, my schedule said I was going to be out between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. So we just got power back a few minutes before we started, and I couldn't have prepared ahead of time because this schedule changes as and when the power grid is constrained and as and when you get the message. So if we do go out, just be gracious with me.
but
Fortunately,
that's why I wanted to show it also to the people, because
yeah,
to the people who are here, because not everybody realizes how it is. In Europe
yeah.
these days, we're talking a lot about electricity and about what will happen. And one of the things that they're considering is thinking about something they don't have a name yet, but I think it's somewhere very similar to the lodging that you just talked about. So. Yeah, we're not there yet. We might end up being there. But we jumped right into
I
that also.
all right. I hope you don't get
So
there, but if you do, then I could we could share some tips. Hopefully not.
yeah, well, so let's keep it to that. If I
Yeah,
ever need tips, I know who to contact.
there we go.
We jumped right into that, but before we even jump to the questions, maybe tell everyone here a little bit about who are you, what do you want people to know about you before we jump into the questions.
Hmm. Thanks, Yves. That's always an interesting question, right? Of who you are, and I think I'm multifaceted, like all of us. We have many sides and many, um, many different sort of perspectives. But basically, my name is Oz Chihwayi, and I am currently working as I'll start from the professional side of things. I'm currently working as a quality coach slash quality engineer, test engineer. So in a testing team for a small South African fintech organization. Um, we're just starting out, and my main focus is around quality and testing. So I think about the product and say, hey, what value are we giving to our customers? What are we building for them? What problems are we helping them solve? And are we doing it in the right way? Are we delighting our customers with the work that we're doing? And also from our own team, are we? I'm very much obsessed by, are we doing it right? Is this the best way we could be doing it?
Mm,
Are we not over optimizing where we shouldn't be? Are we, uh,
mm,
doing things that will not bite us in the long run? So I look at myself as all round quality. I just ask the questions around quality. I help um, everybody in the team to communicate with each other better and to
mm.
see each other's perspectives. And I I like to do that across even outside of my work situation. I find I like to be in spaces where I can be of help and bridge and bring people together. Um, so that's professionally.
Communication is a really part of testing, I would say, and of quality. Yeah, without communication, it's hard to get big quality.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I don't work 24 hours a day. I do other
Luckily
things
for
as
you.
well. Yeah, I I do have a wonderful family. So I'm a husband
Hmm.
um, to a lovely wife. Her name's Jill. I've got two boys, Adrian and O'Neill, and family is a huge part of me. I find that it's a huge responsibility. Yet it's also comes with a lot of um, it's got a lot of satisfaction that comes out of being part of a family and just belonging and being in a space where there's just unconditional love for one another.
That's that sounds really wonderful. That's indeed what we hope that families could be. It's not always the case, but I'm happy that it is with you. It is
Well,
important. Indeed.
I made it sound easy there. It is hard work.
That
And
is true as well. It
yeah,
is
and it's a
is always
journey.
hard, but it's a journey. I like already how our conversation is going. It's
Yeah.
indeed it is hard work to have a family and to have a loving family. But yeah, like you said, you make it sound easy. That also means for me that there's probably a lot of reward and a lot of return that you have. That's probably what makes it sound easy, and that's probably what makes it easier if you have that return. So thanks for sharing
Absolutely.
that. So I want to jump into that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because when I looked at it, I thought, what has influenced me the most about who I am? And
Mm,
I think that answer changes depending on where you are in life and what you're feeling, what you're going through. But I think I've had a very interesting background in terms of before I came to South Africa. So I used to live in Zimbabwe,
mm,
and I lived in Zimbabwe at a time that was very, very interesting. We had hyperinflation in Zimbabwe where you would literally get paid today, it's your payday, and as soon as you get paid, let's say, I remember my last salary there in 2008 was actually $4 quintillion. So do the maths. I can't remember how many zeros they are there,
Way too much.
but yeah. And by the time that money is in your account and you say, "Oh, now I can do a budget and maybe get a few basic items and see if I can get some fuel in my car and food," it's no longer enough to get you the basics that you were dreaming of when that
Wow.
money came into your account. So we lived through a very hyperinflationary environment that you the last time I'd heard such a thing was when I read about the hyperinflation that happened in Germany in the 1930s, and I thought this was one for the history books. But having lived through such a situation and where we had to resort to battering and just reimagining an economic system where you say, hey, I know money's supposed to be the economy. I mean, the store of value, and the it's supposed to be what we're using for trade, but it's just not working. And people were, were very adaptive at the time, and were able to say, hey, I've got bags of sugar in my kitchen, but I need some olive oil or cooking oil or whatever. Can we trade? And we went back to a place where battering was the day, and it worked as much as it could. But there was just a lot of adaptation that I learned, and that was before I even actively worked in an agile kind of environment or an agile situation. I was really forced to think agility and adaptability on the go in terms of life and death situations. So I'd say
Yeah,
that
it
that's
sounds
something
like
that
more agile than most companies these days. Sometimes, if you talk about that, about yeah, if you have that, well, maybe not life threatening, but still, if money isn't worth anything, and if you need to go back to the situation that you were in, like, okay, you need a lot of adaptation and a lot of, yeah, agility, I would say. So that
absolutely.
sounds like a huge influence. And is that, you said that, so you moved to South Africa? Was that a reason for moving, or was that independent from that?
Oh, well, partly because with that decline in the economy, I was working for an international bank at the time, and they also felt their position was starting to be threatened in Zimbabwe, and wanted to have presence out of Zimbabwe. South Africa being an obvious destination for them. So with that move, I was involved in setting up the new data center. I was working in a data center at the time. I was involved in the project that set up the new data center in South Africa, and I acquired the right context and knowledge and experience of how that worked. And when the data center was commissioned, then I put my hand up and said, "Hey, I think I could be useful and valuable there." At the same time, taking advantage of better economic prospects, better prospects for growth and learning, while being valuable. So that's how the move then happened,
Mhm.
which all worked out in the end.
So, and you had a family already at the time, so you moved with your family from Zimbabwe to South Africa, because that's not an easy move, I can imagine.
Oh, absolutely. I had a family already. I had, both my boys were very young, 5 and just under 1 year old. So
Mhm.
Adrian was still pretty young. Uh, but it was a huge blessing being able to move with my family, with a job as well, rather than being forced to move and start looking for a place
Yeah,
to settle.
I
So
can imagine that. Yeah, you had that advantage, of course. And being the children being that young, I imagine that they didn't yet start school in Zimbabwe, so they just started school immediately in South Africa, which I can
That's
imagine,
right.
which makes it easier to just learn one school system and one thing. But
Yes.
that also means, was there a switch in language for them, or how does that?
Yes. We always used to speak our native language called Shona. So
Oh
Shona is
no.
yeah, that's the language, the native Zimbabwean language. It's one of them. And moving across South Africa, we still spoke Shona in the house. We still do. And but then when the children start spending a lot of time in school, they are spending more time in school than they are at home. They
Yes.
pick up they start to speak English and the other languages, which is good. But they also start
So
to
they
use
speak English in school. They speak English in school.
they speak English in school, so
All right.
that does make it a lot easier because
Mhm.
English is also what they would have been taught in Zimbabwe. So we still have the advantage of English and you know speak what we call our mother tongue. So that's that's
Okay.
still a
So it's,
thing. Yes,
because if I remember correctly, in South Africa, there's like what 10, 11 languages, something like that. But in
there are
school, it's
11.
English.
It's mainly English, and you also get the opportunity to learn another additional language, which could be Zulu or Xhosa or Afrikaans or one of the many others. Yeah.
But okay, because like you say, if it's English, so even if they would have been in school in Zimbabwe, they would have changed from one English school to another English school, basically. So that's it's easier to do than if you have to go in a new school with a new language and everything. Yeah. So
Yes.
that's interesting. But I can like well to go back to our question. That's definitely something that will influence you a lot. And living in a country with hyperinflation and then even moving, that has a lot of influence on people's life. I would say. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the key things that stuck out for me was just the need for us as humans to be more adaptable and not to
Mhm.
hold on to our current situations because that can
Mm,
change. We do tend to build our whole view of the world around what we know and what we're used to, around our comfort zone. And when that's
mhm,
shaken, um, you can either be shaken with it, or it can wake you up from a dream and say, "Oh, hold on, there is a whole world out there. There is life. There are other
mhm.
opportunities, and maybe I should explore and see what else could be." And that was something that I learned from being through a time where you have to go through a hyperinflationary environment where every day you have to think about carefully how are you gonna have your next meal, how's things gonna work, and then you have to move the family in such a short space of time and almost restart.
Yeah, and I see what you say is I see a lot of people that lived in multiple countries going to something similar. Like you say, you learn even if you know the world is bigger than your country, moving to another country gives you a totally different view on the world and on different kind of things. Even if you're still staying in the same continent, you still stay in things that look similar, but the world is still different. It's yeah. I've lived only for a couple of months, almost a year in another country, but still it has influence. It has a huge influence on what you do. Okay,
Yeah.
let's move to that next question. That if you had not been doing what you've been doing today, do you know what would have become of you?
Hmm. So I always, when I was younger, I was very fascinated about. I was fascinated with aeroplanes and just the fact that you could get into a metal tin and go high up in the sky and end up in another place in the world. I I always believed that I would do a lot of traveling that way, and
Hmm.
I figured, oh, there are people who have to steer this vessel, and I thought I was gonna be a pilot. I wanted to be
Mm.
one, and just the dreamer in me wanted to be traveling and see the world. I always grew up knowing there was more out there that the the world was waiting for us to explore. So I think I would have been in some kind of way an active sort of traveling person. I
Mm.
don't get tired of traveling. I love long road trips. I can be on a long flight and I'm okay.
Yeah, that's also
Yeah,
important, of course, especially if you would be a pilot, and you need to be okay to be on a long flight, because basically
yeah,
that would be your life. That's and
yeah.
did you ever try to become a pilot, or no?
No, because when I thought I would, then I discovered computers and they were
Ah,
fun.
that's even more fun
They
than airplanes. Yes,
and yeah, so the computers won in the end.
the computers won. The computer always wins somehow.
It does. Yeah.
That's actually a nice quote to have indeed. Computers win. It's yeah. Let's move to that third question. If what is your current biggest challenge, or a challenge you want to share, and if you know, why would that be a good thing for you?
Oh, you have very interesting questions, eh? I think
Thank you.
one of the biggest challenges I have at the moment is, and it's been a long running challenge, and the answer which also varies depending on where you are in the context and everything, but it's always knowing when something's good enough and when you should spend more effort on it. Um, and I think that's a challenge that traverses across my work. I could be obsessive about a small little thing that would then end up, oh, actually there was a huge underlying bug in the way we were building this thing. Or
Mm.
after a couple of days, I come around and say, actually, I've thought about this and it's okay. We can probably go ahead with this, and then there's a
That's a hard thing
temptation.
for a tester to say, I can imagine, because as a tester, and most testers that I know is like they focus so much on quality that just staying like, okay, we can let this bug slip, is kind of hard for most people, I would say, in the testing environment.
It is hard, and I think it comes with then having a real deep understanding of your context that you're working in. If you're
Mm.
working for medical devices that you're testing, maybe heart devices or things that are very life critical, you're not going to be able to slip in a bag and say we'll fix it in production, because that
Terrible
means
not.
people exactly.
People will
And
die.
people will die. And yet, if you're working in a financial system and you find a bug in a monthly report that comes out at the end of the month and it's the fifth of the month, and you know you need a day to fix it, it's probably okay today to let it in because we know we can fix it tomorrow before we produce the month end report. Um, so it also comes with challenging our egos and our identity as testers. Sometimes
Mm.
we do like to feel that, hey, I found this bug and it makes me feel I'm being useful and valuable, or it might make me feel that I haven't found a bug in a long time, and it might shake your confidence. right? But with maturity and experience and understanding your context and understanding the value that you bring before you're looking for bugs in a product, it makes it easier to then see that, look at the bigger picture and say, but where does this matter? Who does it matter to? And if we let it in, what is the impact and how do we recover? Can we recover from it safely? Can we minimize the impact that this issue or this potential bug might have? And I think it's a good thing because all these lessons also apply to life. As as I grow older, as I'm pursuing to be a better person, better version of me today than I was yesterday. All these questions um, are asked of me. You know, am I spending the effort and the time on the things that are going to compound in the greater good, or am I also letting a lot of or too much of it down the drain on things that will not matter tomorrow? So I find that a constant challenge, and I think it's a good one because it sort of keeps me on my toes. And so far, it's given me not enough gray hairs yet. So I think that's a good one.
Yeah, I really like it, especially because you link the medical and the financial. Because I'm working at a bank right now, and indeed, most people in the bank, they have the idea that we need to be. We're talking about people's money, so this is the most. We have to be the most secure situation that there is, and in a sense, like you said, the hyperinflation taught you that okay, money is really important to get it good. Uh, but a medical device is just a little bit higher. If you like you say, if you have a bug that, well, I don't know, you get some money that is not it's not visualized on a bank account, but we can fix it tomorrow and nobody's losing money. That's not a problem. If of course we wouldn't visualize the pills that we need to give in a hospital today and tomorrow we'll give double doses of pills, nah, that's not going to work. So that's a
Not gonna
different
be
kind
good.
of exactly. So
Absolutely.
that's yeah. I like that you compare these things because it shows the level. And most bankers have a difficulty to understand that because they think like, okay, this is money, and yes, it is important, and yes, we need to treat it with respect. So if the money would disappear and we would not be able to show how much money is your bank on your bank account ever in the future, that is definitely a huge bug. So we shouldn't lose that data, that's for sure. But the medical level is a little bit higher because yeah, you cannot fix it tomorrow in a sense that that is even higher. So that's a very nice example. Thank you. And
Thank you.
it shows indeed, like you say, the maturity that you need to have to understand as a tester also the environment that you're working in, and okay, what's the level of yeah of detail that I'm asking for when I'm testing. And I like the phrase that I don't remember exact phrase, but you said something about okay, can we fix it tomorrow? Is it can we basically survive it if that bug will stay one more day in the system? How bad is that problem? And that is a really nice way of putting it, and that puts things a lot into perspective. So yeah, that is helpful for I think many people. So thank you for sharing this. That's
You're
really
welcome.
nice. I already noticed, and I have that with a lot of people that I'm talking here, is that I've noticed a lot of passion because you still, as a tester, you want to deliver the best possible. And even when you would say, let pass a bug for today, it still is about the value that you're delivering for that company. So let's see, what do you know what drives you?
Oh, it's a hard question again. This, but I think the
Yes,
one thing
sorry.
that no, it's good. It's good.
But
I
the
love the
goal for
question.
this podcast is that people learn about the people, and yes, if it yeah, the way we learn best is with deep questions like this. I'm not sure if it's hard, but it's really deep questions that we you
They are
a lot
deep,
of people
yes.
we need to think about it. Huh?
Mm, mm. No, I think I'm. What drives me is I have a fear, or I'm very aware of not wanting to be mediocre, or being
Mm.
aware of wasted opportunity and time. And yeah, it's always driven me. But something that happened to me, not to me, but I experienced a loss in the family. So my father passed away last year, and
Oh.
it was also one of those moments where sort of unexpected he fell ill and then passed away when we didn't expect him to. No one really, you don't really expect anyone to be dying soon. But what that did, it then reflects back on you on that fragility of life and the the finite
Especially if you're
time
a
that we have.
fighter as well, I can imagine that
Exactly.
when you lose your own father, you think about your children. Or at least I haven't
Oh
lost my
yeah.
father yet, but I can immediately imagine what does that do for the children, and how does that affect you and everybody around you.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And it just got me thinking about you know the time that we have, and how much of it we waste, or we could waste less by choosing and finding purposeful ways of spending our time and focusing our energy, and not being mediocre, not just doing good enough, but making real impact. I've also found that when you get on the other side, you commit to something that's hard. You spend a lot of time and effort to learn and deliver some. There's a lot of joy in the end. On the other side, there's a reward. There's a satisfaction that comes with it as well, and that's how a longer term legacy will be built, hopefully over time, of these good things. So I think the drive there is, I don't want to be mediocre. I don't want to waste time and opportunities that are there. But I want to really make a huge positive impact in whatever space that I find myself in, because that comes in different ways and forms. But there are always opportunities to make good impact, and I'm actively looking for those. Yeah.
Oh, that is indeed something. Well, especially because you say it's you thought about it even more when your father passed away. Is that something that you learned from your father, or is there a link there as well, or not?
Not, not that I didn't learn from his words, but I think the actual passing of, like, his passing was
Hmm.
in a lesson for me at that moment. Just a reminder that no one's here forever, and how do we spend the time that we have, and the energy and the focus that we have, because all that is finite. None of those resources are given to us forever.
Oh, and so yeah, I like you say, I can immediately imagine that. Yeah, I have my brother-in-law passed away a year and a half ago, something like that. And
Mm,
indeed, when something profound as this is happening, it makes us think, or made me think really hard about what does that mean? What does that mean for his children? What does that mean for indeed? Well, when I hear people talking about that person, the passion that that person had and what he delivered to the world, it's something similar that I feel like, okay, I hope that people remember me in a similar kind of way
right.
about yes, indeed, my time was worth it. It was not yeah, just fooled around with it. No, it was actually made a difference in the world, like you say. It's a nice way to think about that. And if that's the result to make think you even harder about that what you're delivering in the world that makes it, well, maybe worthwhile is a wrong word of saying when somebody passes away, but it has a positive impact on you as well. So that's a nice way
Mm.
to kind of remember your father in a sense, because that's also what you're saying, as that event had that impact on you. So that is indeed a nice way of looking at it, and celebrating his life in a sense. That's
Yes, totally. Thank you.
that is indeed a nice thing. So let's move to that next question about what is your biggest achievement. So basically, this is your moment to brag. What are you most
Ooh.
proud of? And it's for many people that I'm asking this question. They like, what? Oh, I should be bragging. I didn't expect this, but it's, yeah, it is hard for many of us, huh?
It's hard. Yeah, I like that you asked it as what's your biggest. So like,
Mhm.
look at all these achievements you have achieved
Yes.
and pick
Well,
one. And I'm thinking here, what have I actually achieved yet? And interesting. The thing that came to me really was um, not even work related. I think as work's concerned, I'm still on the journey. I still want to get better. I want to do more. I don't feel that I've reached a peak that I can brag about, but there are
mhm,
some achievements that with some people around me, with teams, a few things stand out. So being a part of the agile conference in South Africa, we used to host what was called Agile in Africa, and in
mhm,
2017 and 2018, I was a part of the organizing committee. I actually chaired it in 2018, and both times we were part of a really successful, vibrant, and great conference that where I made connections and friends, some of whom I still talk to today. So I see that there was a platform and opportunity to build relationships and connections that are strong and some of which are still going on now. So I think that that was a huge achievement. But I was a part of a team. I didn't do any of that, personally. So personally, I feel I'm
Wait,
gonna tell
wait,
you a
because
little
you
bit of
say that
yeah.
before you go into that other story, because completely understand if you're part of a team that it doesn't feel like a personal achievement, but still everybody in the team is part of the achievement. If you take one person away of a team, you probably would not have achieved the same thing. So I think you can still be proud of it, even if you're part of a team. Don't you agree there?
I agree totally. I agree, and you make a good point there that everybody in the team contributed. I remember the long nights, the long days, the passion that was there, and how everybody just showed up and wanted the same thing for all of us, and how we felt afterwards when we saw it happen, and you walk in and the auditorium is full, and the vibes awesome, and people are deeply engaged in conversation and having a good time. That feeling of wow, it was all worth it.
Mm. Yeah,
I
because
experienced
it's
it both.
a lot of evenings to organize a conference. I've been
Oh
part of
yes.
helping a lot of them, and yeah, it's yeah, I know just the energy it takes. Just not
Mm,
just on yourself, but also on your family, because it means nights away that you're preparing, and that you're, yeah, are meeting or whatever you need to do to make it happen. So it's but it's nice, like you say, if you have then a full auditorium that gives a lot of energy back, that makes it worthwhile. So it's nice to
mm.
stand still with that. Okay, I interrupted you when you wanted to tell a more personal story, I think.
Yeah, I thought of another personal story, which I think was a huge achievement for me, and this was to do with or it's to do with running. So back in
Mm,
school, I was not a runner at all. I was quite terrible at athletics. I remember running one 400-meter race and I came last, but I was so far back. It was embarrassing. And then I just excused myself from all subsequent running races and I never ran until I was. Then fast forward many years later, I'm in my 30s, and there used to be what was called here the JP Morgan. So the bank JP Morgan used to have a corporate challenge where they would get many different companies to put up some teams and run a social 5 kilometer race. And I'd never run a single kilometer in my life.
Wow.
And so I put my name up for it. I was a lot weightier than I am now, and I thought, oh, this could be fun. So I started training for this.
Indeed. Oof.
Fi-
You did train.
I had to.
You
Yeah,
never know
it's
how
funny.
how how challenging you were when trying, because I don't think many people would be able to run for 5 kilometers without practicing.
Yeah. You're so right. I started to train for these things for this race a few months before, and
Hmm.
I had a training buddy which helped. And I remember running my first kilometer and fist pumping myself, two, three, and come the race. It was a wonderful event. I went out, had lots of fun, and I ran the whole 5 kilometers. And I thought, wow, that was awesome.
Wow.
I actually had never run 5 kilometers before. I didn't die. I felt like I felt really good. But what that did then, it got me thinking about running. I started looking around. I started observing that there were runners on the road.
Mhm.
I used to probably just drive
Mm.
past them and not look at them. And met a friend of mine a few weeks later. He was wearing this T-shirt written "Comrades Marathon." I will
Mm.
share a link with you for that. And I asked him what this was about, and he said, "No, it's an ultra marathon race that
An
happens
ultra
in here."
marathon. Wow. Not just a
Yeah,
normal marathon, immediately an
not just.
ultra marathon.
I had no idea what that was. He made it sound like lots of fun, and he says, "But I'm staying in your neighborhood, and every Saturday we get together, we go out for a short run, a bunch of good friends. Why don't you come out and see?" I said, "But I've only run one 5 kilometer run." He says, "Oh, that's all right." Came through on the Saturday. We did run longer than five, and it hurts. But I came back the
Oh, he
next
called that a
Saturday.
short run, but that was already longer than your longest run. Okay.
Yeah, I think we ran 7.5 kilometers that day, and they had to shorten it for me. Fortunately,
Who needs enemies when you have friends like this?
when you have friends like this, right? So fast forward a few years, a few more months, I then ran my first 10 kilometer race, and it felt good. And then
Mm,
I learned that a half marathon is 21 kilometers. And
mm.
in a few months, I then managed to run a half marathon. That was
Wow.
okay. And then fast forward, uh, enrolled for a full marathon, which I also ran and then completed. And so after completing that, my good friend from the other day wearing the Comrades Marathon, he goes, "Oh, do you know your time's good enough for you to qualify for the Comrades Marathon? Now we just need to train for 7 months, and then hopefully you can run it." I said, "Okay, cool, let's do it." I don't know what I was thinking, but Yves, what then happened is um, through all this, I ended up going to the Comrades Marathon and actually running it. Um,
Mm.
it is a tough run. It's 90 kilometers of the
Oh.
terrain is quite undulating with a lot of climbing to do. So
Oh.
it would be like two very tough marathons and a 5 kilometer at the end. So if you want to break it
Well,
down that
yeah, that,
way.
but on top of it, it's going up and down as well. So that's even harder, I would imagine.
Yes. And yeah, you get a total of 12 hours to run this race in, and there are cut-off points throughout the race that you have
Mm.
to make. And on my first attempt, I got to the 81 kilometer mark, 5 seconds after the cutoff time. Then that was,
And they're like, okay, sorry, 5 seconds too late. It's like,
sorry,
wow.
5 seconds too late. I was running
Oh,
with another mate, and we decided we would still just finish it, but it's an unofficial finish. So officially, that was not a finish.
but you finished the full 90 kilometers.
I did, but then it doesn't count. You don't get a medal, you don't get
No,
recognition, you don't feel good about it. So what do? You come back.
you try
So
again. Of course, you have no choice. You have to do it. Yeah,
yeah, so
I can get I've never run a marathon, but I can get that drive. I would definitely say no, no, no. I need to get it. I would. I understand that feeling. Yes,
yeah.
it's
So
not
2 years
official.
later, I did come back and started, that same route again, ran it, and I finished within time. And I think that was a huge achievement for me, considering I was not an athlete. I was not made for it. It's not something that I'd grown up doing or loving, but I really was
So
crazy enough to just challenge myself.
just
And
to understand it, because you said I didn't learn it when I was young. So did I understand correctly? You started learning to run like after your 30s, something like that? Is that how old were you when you started running? If I can
it
ask.
was, yeah, I was about 34. So
Wow.
that's when I ran my, you can say, my first sort of kilometer, or anything longer than a lap or two around the field. Otherwise, before that, I just never ran.
Except if you got to have a train or something like that, or you have to have something like yeah. But
Yeah, even that, I would say no. I love it in the rain and just walk.
I okay. So that's a huge difference there in indeed in behavior, and I would say yeah, and it kind of feels to me a very agile way, in the sense that you got the feedback, and you run every week with your friend and his friends, so that got you a lot of feedback about running and about learning the fun of running, I would say. Is that correct interpretation of that journey?
That is, that is very correct, Yves, and I think I could pick you up next weekend and we could start on your journey
Mm.
because you get it
Uh,
already.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that I did run with the problem I have is when I run, I'm not a runner. I think the longest thing I did run was indeed 5 kilometers. But I did
Hmm.
that with a friend, and the problem is when I run on my own, I either run too slow or too fast. So I indeed have to have a friend to keep track, because I cannot pace myself. I really need someone that has a kind of pace that I can do. And if it's too slow, yeah, I don't know what that happens, but that's not good either. And if it's too fast, of course, I burn out. And
Yeah,
I now I understand why I was such a bad runner in school, because basically I would try to keep up with all the fastest runners in school, which would basically burn myself up. And I was not able to do that. And if I would have had a good coach at that time to learn me about, okay, no, run slower, but this is the tempo that you, and I've learned that I'm actually really bad at setting my own pace. So yeah, I'm not that good in that part. So a few years back, well, probably about 10 years ago, I ran for a year or two with a friend, but then he had some problems with his ankles, and because of that, I haven't run anymore, because that was actually working pretty well with that friend that was putting the pace. And like you say, you need to have some help and someone who can, yeah, can help you getting it, and probably giving you some tips on what is good for you. For me, it was we were actually chatting a lot while we were talking, while we were running, and
Mm.
that turned out to be really good. As long as I could keep talking, it meant it was the right space, the right pace
Yeah.
for me. And so that was something I've learned. Where before in school, we were always taught that we should shut up and not talk while running, and actually that didn't help us to, yeah, because in school it's like, yeah, you have to, it's serious business and whatever, and that it
Yeah.
really didn't help me. So, but that's indeed a very big achievement. If you're talking about achievement, you started off with saying, "I'm not sure if I have some achievements, but organizing conferences, doing an ultra marathon." Even twice, because I know you didn't get the medal and it was too late. But for me, it's still, you still finished, so I still think it is an achievement on its own, and then indeed finishing it in time, that's an even better achievement. So that these are things to really be proud of, to get yourself into shape, because not just the end, but it's also the whole journey that you talk about, learning it at an
Yeah.
age that is yeah, usually we're a lot better to learn our bodies and to learn new skills for especially skills that demand so much from yeah, from a body of like running, that is for me still a huge achievement. So that's a very nice story. I want to move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Yeah. I've got quite a few, but the one that I thought I've been enjoying lately, it's not a new tool or tip, but it's one of those good old ones, which which was inspired by the Toyota way, and that's the improvement kata,
Mm.
um, which I find it very useful because in life, you, whether it's work, whether it's our personal lives or financial goals or whatever goals we have, we are trying to get to a next step, and I find this um, improvement kata very useful. And for those that are not, aware of it or not very well versed with it, can I just briefly break it down and say what it is?
Yeah, please do, please do.
Yeah, so it's basically four steps that it has. Is that you look at yourself and you say, "Oh, I really want us to get better at a certain thing." So it forces you to understand the challenge and say, so that the first step is called understand your challenge.
Mm.
What is the problem that you are trying to solve? Whether it can be for a big problem, small problem, a small improvement of a process or a system, but it forces you to go back and say, think about your challenge, think about the problem you're trying to solve. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Once you understand that, then you've got to look and say, but if that's the problem we're trying to solve, or the next place we want to be, where am I right now? What are my constraints? And what is my current reality? And once you see that, you now have a good feel of your reality and the gap that exists between. Then the third thing is, what is the next step that I can take in
The
order to get
smallest
towards
exactly, the smallest increment, right?
the smallest increment as a step that I can take to set me towards that place that I want to get to? And then you take these. The fourth step is the actual activation or the execution of, find small little experiments or small little steps, but make sure you frame them as experiments, because the goal is to then learn from them. And you want to experiment, you want to jig jig the system a little bit, or change one small little thing, be able to observe the results of that change and say, is it leading me towards or away from where I want to go? If it's towards, can I do another round of that experiment, maybe amplify it or get more? If it's away from it, then that's okay. We've learned that it's not the right sort of experiment at this time. Is there something else we can do? So I like this improvement kata because it's a simple model, and we know all
Mhm.
models are wrong, but some are
Sometimes useful.
some are sometimes useful, or maybe sometimes
Yeah,
useful, or less wrong.
exactly. Less wrong.
And
That I like how you phrase that. Yes.
yeah, so I think the kata for me is really one of those that is easy to keep at the forefront. It's easy to implement and abstract in different situations. Um, it's also not very heavy with rules. I think I don't like too many rules. I like the
Mm.
freedom to experiment and change and apply things according to my context. So I think it's a good tool to just keep close to your pocket and find ways to apply it when when you don't have any other.
I like that, and in a sense, it's a little bit what your friend did with you with the running. Yeah, it's like, okay, let's go next week, and then it's
Yeah,
a small little thing. Oh, you didn't run before, or you only run five. Okay, next experiment is like seven, and maybe you tried eight or 10, whatever. But seven was whatever you were able to achieve, and then the next week was a little more, and then so it's a little kata on its own. He probably didn't call it that way, and maybe you didn't even see it that way, but it was similar kind of thing. Yeah? It's like, what's that next little step that you need to take, and all you know, a few years later, you run an ultra marathon. So it's
mm,
and if you would have started with the idea, let's go for that 90 kilometers when you first heard about it, you would probably say, no, 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 that's too much. And he now said, it's we're running a little bit. So okay, okay, a little bit. It's but it turns out a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit more every time. I like that. Um, I like the way you bring katas because yeah, in the agile world, we talk a lot about agile mindset, but the last year or so, I've been thinking a lot about. I really think mindset is important, but when I look back on how I learned myself agile
mm,
and a lot of these things, it is always something that is very similar to katas. It's like, okay, doing things, it's making small improvements and being very active, and okay, getting some feedback and doing something with it, and with that gradually you learn that, okay, this is that mindset, and this is how you improve, and then this is okay. And it's like learning, okay, feedback isn't that hard. Isn't always nice, because yeah, like you say, the feedback that you get at the 80 kilometers, like, sorry, 5 seconds late. I can imagine that it can drives you crazy, like 5 seconds, it's only what, but
yeah,
it gives you the energy to say, like, okay, next time I'll do better. And maybe I'll sprint in every time I go to that point, just to make sure I'm not losing
yeah,
5 seconds. It's that kind of mindset where you want to keep improving, and small things. It's I
yeah.
like that.
And Yves, you mentioned the mindset. Why do you think it's so hard for us to? Because we know theoretically what we should be doing. Why is it a hard thing for us to do?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've learned it through the practical stuff,
Yeah,
like you say. Then you learn, like, it's not that hard. But I think there's a
yeah,
lot of this that we think it's hard, and there is somehow, I don't know. I think sometimes I blame school for some of the things that we learned, or the people around us, because they at school is it's always like you're either good or bad. You're it's your past, or you have a grade that is good, but it's school for me, a lot of, well, at least some of the teachers I had were like, they really were looking at things in a kind of black and white world. Either you were good in math or you were bad in math, or you were good in a certain language or you were bad in it. And it really felt, for me, yeah, kind of limiting. And if I look in the world in a much more agile way with a growth mindset, it's like, okay, like you say, I was not able to achieve that 80 kilometers because I just failed in 5 seconds. But it tells you, you could look at it in a negative way and say I wasn't good at it, or you could look at it and say, oh, I almost achieved it, I'm almost there, and that gives you energy to try again. And
Yeah.
in school, when the example I gave about running in school, basically the feedback I got in school was like, you're a bad runner. And I nobody was teaching me how I could be a better runner, and I didn't get that
Yeah.
feedback, or I didn't listen to it. That's possible as well, that they tried, but that I was too stubborn to listen to it. Because of course
Yeah.
sometimes, and I like also, you said it earlier about those rules. Sometimes the rules are so strict that it keeps you from learning. And
Yeah.
like you say, when you have a little more flexibility, you can adapt in ways that are better for you. And maybe the system
Mhm.
is not ready for you, but at least you learn to adapt in a way. It's
I like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
It's, yeah, I think it, for me, I understand why we need rules, because indeed yeah, driving, for example, we cannot just have everybody drive on all sides of the roads. We need to have some rules about it, but at the same time, we can learn about adapting and different kind of things.
Mhm.
I want to move to the next question about remote work. I have no idea how much remote work experience you had, but I assume that at least with COVID, you had to work a lot more remote, but maybe even before, when you talked about Zimbabwe and creating a data center in South Africa. I don't know. I'm just imagining that there could have been some remote work there as well.
Yeah. So when we were, I've never thought of it that way.
Mm,
So that's a good point you raised there. When we were building or setting up the data center here in South Africa, I would I would have to fly out here to South Africa. Zimbabwe borders South Africa, so it's a short flight. It's a 1.5 hour flight, but it's still in another country, and you're away from your family. So I'd have to fly out for a week and do as much as I could in that week, and work with a team of other engineers and people that came from the UK and different places as we're trying to set it up. And we would go back to our home countries for the next 2 or 3 weeks and work together collaboratively, each one from their own country. And I would say, as you said, I'd never thought of it as my first real experience of remote work, but that was probably it.
mm.
Um, as well as it was really more the co-location of the teams. So I was also working with a team that was in the UK while I was in Zimbabwe, and there was another team in India that we worked with. And we started back then in the early 2000s to to work across boundaries, across cultures, across time zones, which was which was interesting. Um, and what made that better was when there was opportunity for some people to travel and you meet each other, and it's no longer just a person or an icon on the phone, or I mean on the computer, or a voice on the phone. It then became a real human. You you shake their hand, you hug them, you have a meal and a drink later, and you watch a game of football or whatever it is, and you realize we
This is
have
a person.
it's a person like me. We're the same.
Exactly. And
Uh,
I like that you say you talked about early 2000s. So that means, well, we did have some tools like Skype around probably, but not that much. And definitely the quality of the image and the sound was really bad at that time. Um,
it was
uh,
bad. Yeah.
I joke that the people I see was like in these old games where you had like a large blocks and you could hardly recognize people, and you thought you could recognize them, and then you see a picture of people today video chatting and like, okay, this is a big difference.
Exactly, because you would always then be shocked when you saw the person. You're like,
Is
there
that
were
the
huge
same person?
pixels.
They were used
Yes,
pixels. That was the word I was looking for.
yes. So yes, I was through that. I learned. I worked through that period, and then COVID. I think COVID gave us just before COVID. We were working for. I was working at a different organization, and back then we our leaders were quite progressive. They started to equip us for remote work.
Mm,
And when COVID came and everybody got grounded to their homes and wherever they were, we had already started experimenting with working from home, and people were coming into the office 3 days a week and 2 days a week, and we
So you
started to
were
get it.
prepared better than many other people, I would say, in that sense.
We were definitely prepared. We had the tools. We were experimenting with different technologies for having meetings and conversations and collaborating. So we were already on that path. Um, but I think the things that I've learned about remote work is really a great need for personal responsibility.
Mm,
Uh, it's I know, speaking from my context where I have a family and you're working in your home area, and I love the garden. I have to then I'm not very good with rules, so I have to I've had to learn to put in place some rules to help me focus and not be distracted, and then watch my time and be have that commitment to to work with the same alignment as my team or wherever they are, and just be able to put boundaries around my own distractions. I think we've learned that there's a lot of distractions. I think COVID came with a huge
mm.
emotional toll on us. I mean, if you switched on the
Oh,
news,
yes.
the thing you hear is the numbers, and then even here, I lost a neighbor. One of my neighbor friends was really good friend, and people that are down with COVID, and some of them didn't make it, and all that had a huge toll on us and our mental health, and yeah, and then just being in the same space with everybody.
And
Um,
children can be very distracting. I mean, they see you at home and they don't always realize that, well, you're there, but
yeah,
you still have to work. So yeah, it
yeah,
can be hard.
yeah. So those are some of the challenges I've had to deal with personally, and then step back and say, okay, how do I then make the most of my time, knowing that I do need to have time for myself to prepare myself mentally, emotionally, be ready for the day, and then show up in the work in the most optimum way that I can, and then be present to make a meal because the kitchen's right here, and be present to
Mhm.
then spend time with family, and do with the other distractions. Maybe get a delivery or take time to go into a bank or wherever that I may need to physically be there. Um, so that's what remote working has taught me, and the need for us to prioritize our mental, physical, and emotional health. I think remote working has shown us that it is important to be intentional and actively do things that also benefit and feed into your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, spiritual just wholeness. Because if you're whole, if you're investing time in that, you have a better shot of being impactful and being focused in the workplace as you're working and engaging with your peers. So, yeah,
Yeah, that you we go full circle back again about about delivering and what drives you. And I recognize a lot of what you say also about COVID, about how emotionally drawing it was for many people. Um, so yeah, especially if you have friends and family who are suffering from it, that takes a huge emotional toll. Like you say, the numbers. I stopped watching at some point because it was taking so much
yeah,
emotional space for me, and it was at the same time it was like comforting knowing the numbers, but at the same time it's also draining and seeing that things are getting worse and not
yeah,
really things are happening to make things better. It was emotionally very hard for many people, including me. So I like that you say that you put that attention on it because we it's 2 years now. It's almost 3 years now, and it feels for many people almost a distance, but it was a huge toll for us, and we will have to see if things are picking up, if things are getting worse again in winter this year. But it's I had some conversations over the weekend with friends that are worried about it, and we at the same time it's important
mm,
to stay worried, but at the same time it's also important to not get too emotional about it because like what you said, it was a huge emotional toll on us, or on a lot of us. That's
yeah, yeah.
okay. I would like to go to a book. What is a book that you have read that you want to talk about?
Ooh, so this is a book that I am rereading. I just finished rereading it again, I think, for the it must be the third time now that I'm reading it.
Wow.
And it's a book by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg called
This one,
Non. That's the one. That is the one.
maybe it's a different cover because there's like multiple covers, multiple versions of
There,
that book, but it's
there are multiple covers, yes, but that is the book. And have you read it yourself, Bess?
I have read it, and I'm trying to look. No, it's not. It's somewhere there, but
It's somewhere
I've
there.
read it, and it's a book that I keep close because indeed it's. I haven't reread it, but I flipped through it again multiple times because indeed it's sometimes it's. Well, I'll let you first talk about it before I go into what I wanted to say. Let you first
Yeah.
talk about
Okay. Thanks. No, I think it's just a reminder of how I like how it takes a different spin on it challenges the way we've been taught to communicate and to expect out of other people and life, and it flips it on its head and actually says, you know what, maybe our expectation and the way we've always thought about communicating and um, what we expect to feel from other people, is not right, or there could be a better way. So it really looks at it and says, how about we focus on a few things, and it focuses on, how about we learn to observe situations, we learn to observe ourselves, and others, and then from there we get in touch with our feelings, we get in touch with how we're feeling, and how our emotions are cooking inside. And once we do that, we actually learn to communicate how we feel and give that as a gift. So what he says is, give express a need as a gift, and that way, if a need is a gift you're requesting that someone, an action that someone should take for you, and if it's not received the way you think it should, then you become inquisitive and you want to understand why. And there's just so much more richness in that kind of communication because it focuses on, can you empathize with the other person first, and it removes some of the things that have been inbuilt in our you talked about school. I think school was one of those places that builds in things like judgment. You judge either
Mm.
you're wrong or you are right. This is correct or it's wrong. And then you, everybody that didn't get 50%, you get grouped, you get judged, you get, condemned in some dungeon somewhere. But it then it takes that out of the picture and says, hold on, it's not so much about being right or wrong. It's not so much about um, someone not giving us what we think they should, or not making us feel the way we think they should make us feel. But are we empathizing enough? Are we able to be curious and understand why? And then when we do that, we are able to communicate at a deeper level. We are able to meet each other's needs, and we're able to communicate our feelings and be. It just creates a healthier kind of communication and more meaningful and deeper relationships, I think. And it's a hard thing to do, right? It's not.
I
I've
was about to say
oversimplified
it's really
it.
hard because well, I've for me it's a book that, like what I said, flipping through, it's helpful because there's multiple levels. Understanding my own feelings is one thing, but being able then to still empathize with another person. I While you were talking, I was just thinking about something that happened to me a couple of months ago, and I really felt attacked by a colleague. I don't want to go too much into the detail, but it was really very strange situation. Um, and I really felt my emotions very clearly, but I was so angry. I was so that, yeah, I just couldn't resist on yeah, on using wrong and definitely violent communication language, because I was so angry and I was very much in touch with my emotions. So there was a good part of that, that I was very able to tell what it did to me. So that's the good part. But unfortunately, I did it using words that were not that healthy, and so that, like you
Mm,
say, I didn't empathize with the other person, and that didn't help to restore the communication, and it didn't help to yeah, to do everything what Rosenberg talks about. But yeah, that, and this is where the moments that I realized afterwards that, okay, I should have realized it, and this is why I want to keep that book close to that. When things like this happen, that I can just flip through the book again, realize, okay, maybe this is the kind of things to say and use in words and this kind of thing, because like you say, it's very hard to do. It is, but the harder it is, the more important it is to do it. That's what I felt after that situation. Um,
I
I,
like that.
it's, yeah, for me, the things that are hard bring usually most of the value. That is why it's good to do that, and this is why it's so important to have that book close to me, to flip
Mhm.
through it at these kind of moments, because that's and it's I was really happy when I heard that you wanted to talk about that book, because it's indeed a book that I think is really important in our, well, I think in all kind of communication. We You started talking in the beginning about, okay, about testing and about good communication. Well, that's definitely a kind of book that helps with this kind of with with these kind of communications to talk about, because well, the whole situation, testing development, there's a lot of people that feel attacked by a tester telling you this is wrong. No, it's both helping. We both want the same thing. We want better quality, but depending on how you phrase whatever you're phrasing about the bug that you found, will make feel people attacked or not attacked. And even if you phrase it really well, they might still feel attacked, but at least you have empathy for that person. That helps a lot, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that book, because I think it is one of these, yeah, things that I think everyone that's working somehow professional should read it. Even every parent should read it. It's every teacher, you talked about school, every teacher should read it. It's so important as a book. That
I
is
agree with you on that. It's helped me a lot with just communicating as a parent as well. Because as you say, it's a lot harder to empathize with the people you actually love the most, the people you stay with. It's
oh
strange.
yes,
But it's when you look at yourself and you're like, that was not so cool, and you have to
exactly.
be honest, and you realize actually it's harder to empathize with the people that are closer to you, and it takes more effort, and the harder it is. I like that line of yours. The more important it is. Yeah,
Mhm. Well,
yeah.
and children, my children are already teenagers, so I have a 20-year-old and a 17 and a 14-year-old. So, and they're really good mirrors in showing you when I'm not empathizing. If I have an argument with my partner, definitely my oldest son will jump into that and have arguments or statements about that, because he sees the difference between when I do and when I don't, of course. It doesn't help, because that's the part
Yeah,
that is not not helping. If two people are arguing, are fighting, or discussion, you shouldn't jump into that. That never helps. It always makes the
yeah,
situation worse. But yes, he's right about a lot of these situations at that moment, and it's about, in most cases, about nonviolent communication. How do we say it to people? Do we still empathize with the other side? And yeah, and like you say, with the people we love most, it's the hardest. For, yeah, I don't know why, but it is indeed, it's probably because it's so close to ourselves, and it's shaking. Well, I'm just talking for myself. It's shaking to my core when there is
hmm
something wrong in the relationship, or when the relationship with my children is not going the way I hope it would go. It just shakes
yeah,
me. It's scary sometimes, because of course, as a parent, you always, or at least I want to be the best parent, even if I know that best parent doesn't exist. Yeah, I still just want to do it as best, as good as, well, as best as possible for raising my children, of course.
mm.
Wow,
Nice.
we go really deep in these things, huh? So I
Yeah.
want you to go immediately to that person. What? I no no. Before we go to the person, is what question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Ooh.
Now it's a moment for you to find a difficult question.
So I really thought you got all the difficult questions out of me, Yves. I don't
You
have a
can ask an
question.
easy. You can ask him a simple question. Huh? That's fine as well.
Actually, I wanted to bend the rules a little bit and
Mm,
see if I can turn this question to you and ask you what book you've been reading, because I've been enjoying this conversation, and I feel I could learn. I would I would be inspired, or I could take something away if I got a chance. I see there's no question for me to ask you a question. So can I
mm.
take this one and just ask
Yes, sir.
what book are you reading, or have you recently read that's still brewing in your head, and
I'm
why?
at this moment. I'm into a book club, and the book that we read recently, just last week, discussing. It's actually a book I read before. That was the Culture Code. I think that's the name is, and it's about yeah, about. It talks about good teams, basically a little bit about bad teams, but basically a lot about good teams and what it does it take to create them, and a lot of examples. And um, I like the book a lot. The one thing that I've noticed, and I didn't expect it, I read it before, but I listened to it now, so I didn't take
Hmm.
notes. I just was talking about what I listened to, and I realized when I was discussing it last Thursday that, oh, actually, because I listened to it, it's the book makes a lot of sense. I really love it. But if I look back and if I then have to tell the stories about it, it's a little bit harder. So that makes me wonder a little bit about, okay, is it just good storytelling and it is hard to retell the story? So I'm a little bit puzzled about it. Because of that, I ordered. Apparently, I figured out I learned last week that there is a workbook with it. So I've ordered that one that is about to come to arrive this week. So that I hope that there are some things that I can actually practice from that book. That's the one thing that is top of mind. But on top of, maybe I'll add another one, is that we discussed it. During that discussion, we also talked about a book that's called What Emotions Are Made Of. I think that's the title of the book. And what is interesting, that what I've learned about that book is that, because we talked about remote work and about talking person to person with someone and shaking hands and hugging, what I've learned from it is that, from that other book, is that we seem to misunderstand body language. We seem to think that we understand body language much more than we actually are. The research or the science shows, at least that's what that author, I know her first name is Lisa, but I can't come up with the last name. But I'll link the it's in the show notes as well. But what
Okay,
I've
thank you.
learned from that book, and I'll send you the link afterwards also. But what I've learned from that book is that yeah we misinterpret body language. We seem to understand body language, but body language is very, very cultural. And what we think we know about body language is like you're nodding right now. If I would be talking to someone in Asia, they would be doing this to me,
Yeah.
exactly the same thing as that. And so this is the typical examples that we know, but it's very subtle and a lot of other different things. So it turns out that if you're always close into your own environment, and maybe that's already different between Zimbabwe and South Africa, that there are some very small changes in body language that we sometimes misinterpret because we're always close into our environment. Um, and so that means that a lot of these things we think that we understand, and then we go to a different culture, and then we feel at place or we don't understand the person, and that makes it
Mm,
hard. And so that for me is one of the books that I've read the last year that basically had most impact on me because of that. Well, there's a lot of other research in that book, but the part about the body language is the one part that I remember most because it's got so much impact on. Wow, okay. And especially
wow.
in the remote environment, we seem to think that, because we have much more distance, that it's harder. It turns out that there is a lot less chance that we misinterpret body language. And this is why, if we can get over the fact that we're seeing each other with only video, that it can actually work as well if we want to get over that and try out. So there's
Okay.
a lot there that can work. The book is full of things that is really, for me, like, what, this is mind blowing. So a lot of research that she did, which is what I like.
Okay.
I like to read
Yeah.
books that have like the book that you talked about, nonviolent communication. There is also a lot of research, and it's not just an opinion from a person, but this is really
Yeah.
doing it in the field and seeing what actually works with people, and that's the kind of books that I like.
I like those ones too. Well, Yves, those sound like really good books. I'm fascinated, particularly by the second one, the emotions one as well. I can give you a quick example of of a
Yeah,
real
please do.
situation. So in our culture, in the Shona culture, um, when you're talking to people that are older than you or in a higher place than you, so whether it's an organization hierarchy, um, one of the things you've got to do as a sign of respect is you can't look at them in the eye,
Hmm.
right? Because that becomes a challenge. It's like you are confronting and challenging. So as a sign of respect, you when you're talking to your elders or somebody who's more senior or in a higher hierarchy than you, you then look towards them, but
Sideways, but
make
not.
sure you avoid eye contact, because that means you are listening to them, you are hearing them, and you're also respecting them. You can imagine
In
that
Western
doesn't get.
culture, people will say, why don't you look at me, and why is
Why are
this?
you not looking at me? Yes.
Mm.
So that is something that I have had to learn myself, and it's interesting because when I do go back home and I'm talking to my great uncles, or other people that are older that have this culture and belief in them,
They feel
it does.
unrespected if you
the- yes,
use your new learned skills, so you have to
yes.
constantly adapt. Wow,
So that's something there.
this is the exact example that
Yeah.
I think I'm going to use that example because it's indeed it's a very nice example of how very subtle, and people will think, and because like you say, if you would if you would not talk about it in Western culture, people would then feel like, why are you not looking at it? They will feel unrespected, and in your
Yeah.
other in your home time, people feel disrespected if you do it differently, and people will not
Yes.
talk about it, but they will just tell you that, yeah, you're not respecting me, or you don't have this is a real good example. This is and it's very subtle, like you say, looking people
Yes.
into the eyes, and things like that. So that's a very good example. Wow.
Mm.
That's, yeah, you didn't ask, well, you didn't tell yourself a question, but at the same time you talked about a very, very deep example for something I thought I knew already. So it's bringing a lot of value there. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for sharing those books and allowing me to flip the question back at you.
Yeah, I have to be ready for all kind of things when I do these kind of interviews. And I have to, yeah, I have to be honest. If I ask very deep questions, I shouldn't be afraid when people sometimes flip the question back to me. So I shouldn't say that. No, no, you're not allowed to do that. So I feel that it's also respectful to do that then. Okay, let's move to that next one. And that's the question is, who do you think I should ask next? And I know that you thought about a few people, so let's bring it on, I would say.
Yeah, and I haven't spoken to these people yet, so putting
Well,
them on
well,
the
yeah,
spot.
that's always what we see. In I don't tell the people until the video goes out, and then I just tag them or find people. And some people they don't accept it. That's also a possibility. That's a risk that we're taking,
Yeah,
but that's fine for me.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So I did think of two people. Both I consider good friends. They
Mhm.
are people that I've worked with previously and in the same team. And yes, I think I lost you there.
I think. Well, wait. Let me put.
There we go.
Yes, you're back here, and we are back in the same. So
Okay, we're back in the
let's.
same.
So you were talking about two friends of yours.
Yeah, two friends of mine. Both I've worked with them previously. We were part of the same team at some point, and even afterwards, we continued to work together. And we were involved in conferences and other community projects, and just meetups, and bringing agility to the workplace and to people's lives. And we were all passionate about just giving and contributing. Um, First one is Mandla Magagula.
And that should be his picture, if
That
I'm
is the
correct.
guy. That's him. That's him. I think he has very interesting background as well. So how he's come, his journey is very interesting, and there's lots to learn and take away. He's taken a lot of wisdom through his journey to be where he's at, and I think he has good conversations and lots of lessons and nuggets in there.
Mhm.
Um, Similarly, the second person is Candice
And that's
Herodotu.
her.
That's her. Also, I worked with Candice before. she's very passionate about um, making impact in people's lives as well. She 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 hosts she runs one of the biggest developer sort of conferences in South Africa. She's been organizing that. I don't want to steal her thunder or anything, but she has lived her life according to some of these agile principles, and she just is a ball of energy. She's
Mm.
passionate about what she does and has lots of goodness to share as well. So those are the two that came to mind. There is
I
more, but
really look forward.
obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Every time I ask this question to people, most of them immediately have like 10 people that we want to talk about. But my
yeah,
list is already growing with every person I'm talking to. So we have to limit it a little bit. But at the same time, for me, it's really wonderful to learn about new people and to learn and the way you passionately spoke about both of them, it already gives me a lot of desire to talk about them and to learn about what they can bring and to have similar kind of conversations. So, also, I want to thank you for your time. But before we go, I want to ask you what is a good way for people to reach out to you? What's the best way for people if they want to contact you or find you?
I love connecting with new people and learning and growing and finding opportunities to make good impact. So I am on Twitter. So my handle is at Oz Chihwayi. Yeah, you've got it. You've got it. I'm
Mhm.
also on LinkedIn. Um,
And that should be the one.
that is my LinkedIn profile. Um, that, so I'm quite happy and keen to connect and get together, learn what's going on the other side of the world, and just learn and grow together.
Well, I think this was for me a wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot, both about your country. I learned about differences in like you say, how you treat people with respect. Um, I didn't know about this. The interesting part is, for example, you talked about. The money issues that were in your country. I didn't know about it. I knew about the one in Germany, and so, but
Mm,
unfortunately in the rest of the world we know very limited history of what's happening in Africa. So it's always very limited to with it. It's insane because if you just look at the size of the continent, it's so much huger
yeah,
than Europe, but we hardly
yeah,
learn about it. We learn about America and some of the cultures there, and yeah, if we're lucky, we'll learn a little bit about Russia, but Africa we learn very limited things about it. So I'm really happy. This is for me one of the reasons why I'm doing this, to learn about different cultures and different people around the world. And I've learned a lot. It was a wonderful conversation. Like we said before we talked, this is more than an hour, but as you said, if things are flowing, things are happening. And this was, again, for me, a very nice conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Ves, I want to say thank you as well to you. You are a wonderful host. You are kind and gracious. You set a really good tone and you made me very comfortable. I don't feel like I'm talking to you for the first time, so, and I hope it's not the last time that we get to talk. So thank you very much.
I hope it as well. I've said it before on some of the other episodes that I was scheduled to visit Africa in 2020, well, during COVID, but of course I didn't went due to COVID. But that summer of 2020, we were scheduled to go to Africa because I wanted to have my children to see a different continent.
All
So
right.
it's been postponed because now they're studying. It's very hard to find the moment, but it still is in the back of my mind to sometimes go to visit. It's just not clear what country it is because that will depend a little bit on, yeah, on other circumstances. But maybe it might be South Africa, and when it is, I will definitely reach out to the different people that I talk about. So yeah, and like you
Please do.
say, it felt like not the first time that we've been talking, and that's always nice. It's of course it would be an insult to other people that I talk to say that it's not that, but it felt this was, yeah, for me one of the nice conversations. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, you guys. Have a lovely evening, and yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Bye
Cheers.
bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.